My family demanded I cancel my wedding so my perfect sister could shine. But when I discovered she was cheating on her fiancé with 4 different men, I exposed everyone and destroyed their perfect world. I'm 28 years old. I work as a corporate events coordinator. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened in the last few months basically blew up my entire family. And there are still people sending me messages telling me I'm a horrible person. The thing is that always, and when I say always, I mean since I can remember, I've been like the invisible daughter to my parents. I don't know if it was because I was born first and wasn't the novelty anymore, or because my younger sister Amber just came along 3 years later and they decided she was more interesting, prettier, more everything. Amber is 25 now, and I swear that girl has never done anything wrong in her life according to my parents. Like literally, she could burn down the house and they'd find a way to blame me. I grew up being the one who got good grades but never good enough. The one who helped around the house but never enough. The one who tried to make everyone happy but always failed somehow. Amber on the Risai of courted as 19 to the 5. Other hand could get a D in math, and my parents would take her out for ice cream to celebrate because she did her best. She could leave her room a complete disaster and nobody said anything, but if I left a dish in the sink, it was the end of the world. And look, I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating or being dramatic, but ask any of my aunts, uncles, or cousins, and they'll tell you the same stories. At family gatherings, my parents spent all their time talking about Amber's achievements, showing pictures of Amber, introducing Amber's boyfriends like they were royalty. I could be standing right there next to them, and it was like I was part of the furniture. When I graduated from college with honors, my parents showed up late to the ceremony because Amber had a dance recital at her school. It wasn't even an important recital, it was like a mid-semester presentation. But there they were, arriving when they were already handing out the last diplomas. I remember my mom hugged me quickly and said, "Congratulations, honey, but we have to go now because Amber is waiting for us at the restaurant. She wants to celebrate her recital." They didn't even ask if I wanted to celebrate my graduation. That night, I ate dinner alone in my apartment with a frozen pizza. And honestly, I think that's when I started to accept that this is how things were always going to be. I met Joshua 4 years ago at a work conference. He's 30 years old, works in graphic design, and he was the first person in my life who made me feel like I mattered. You know what I mean? Not like a second choice or an alternative, but like the main option. We became a couple after 6 months of dating, and from the beginning he noticed the weird dynamic with my family. The first time I took him to a family dinner, my parents basically ignored him all night to talk about Amber's new boyfriend, a guy named Grant who works in finance or something like that. Joshua asked me later in the car if it was always like that, and all I could say was, yes, get used to it. We got engaged in January of this year. Joshua proposed to me on a beach during a weekend. We got away. It was perfect and private and exactly what I wanted. When I told my parents, my mom said, "Oh, how nice, Michelle," and then literally 5 minutes later started talking about how Amber and Grant were planning to move in together. There was no hug, no tears of happiness, nothing. My dad gave me a pat on the shoulder and said, "Congratulations, let us know the date so we can save the day." That was it. Joshua and I decided we wanted an October wedding. Nothing too big, like 100 guests, at a nice place we found on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't super expensive, but not cheap either. You know, something mid-range that we could afford with our savings. My parents offered to pay for the venue, which surprised me quite a bit because I thought they weren't even going to offer help, but they said it was the right thing to do because I'm their daughter and blah blah blah. We signed the venue contract in March, put down the deposit, and started planning everything. I was excited, like really happy for the first time with something related to my family because I felt like they were finally giving me some attention. And then July came. July was when everything went to hell. My parents called me one Sunday morning and said they needed to talk to me urgently, to come to their house. I thought something bad had happened, like someone was sick or something, so I canceled my plans and went. I arrived and there they were, both sitting in the living room with those serious faces. And my mom started with, "Michelle, we need to ask you a very important favor." Turns out Grant was going to propose to Amber in August. And my parents wanted me to postpone my wedding or flat out cancel it so that Amber could have her full year of engagement without me stealing the spotlight. They said it like that, verbatim, "Without you stealing the spotlight from your sister." I sat there trying to process what they were saying. I explained that we had already signed a contract, that we had already sent out invitations, that people had already saved those dates, that we had paid deposits to vendors. My dad said, well then, lose the deposits. We'll help you reschedule for next year. And I asked, but why? I mean, why do I have to change my whole wedding? Because Amber is getting engaged. My mom said, because Michelle, your sister is only going to get engaged once in her life, and she deserves to enjoy that special moment without you taking away the attention. She literally said that to me, as if I had gotten engaged first on purpose to ruin Amber's life. I told them no, that I was sorry, but I wasn't going to cancel my wedding. My dad turned red. You know, that face he makes when he's about to explode, and told me then don't count on our financial support. I asked what that meant, and he said that if I don't postpone the wedding, they're not going to pay for the venue like they promised. So basically, they were blackmailing me. My mom added that it was important to be a good sister, that family comes first, that I was being selfish. Selfish for wanting to get married on the date I had already planned. Can you believe it? I left that house crying, got to my apartment, and Joshua was waiting for me because he knew I had gone to see my parents. I told him everything and he was furious, like angrier than I had ever seen him. He told me we didn't have to accept that we could find another way to pay for the venue, that my parents were completely out of line. And he was right. But the thing is, it wasn't just the money. It was the fact that once again I had to sacrifice myself for Amber. Once again, I was the one who had to give in and make myself small so she could shine. I spent like 3 days feeling horrible, guilty, angry, confused, all at the same time. And then I remembered something. Like 2 months before, I had gone for coffee with a childhood friend, Tiffany, and she casually mentioned something about Amber. She said something like, oh yeah, your sister. I saw her the other day with a guy who wasn't Grant. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe it was a friend or a coworker. But now with all this, I don't know. Something clicked. I texted Tiffany and asked her directly, hey, when you saw Amber with that guy, how did they look? And she responded well, like, very affectionate, like they were kissing outside a restaurant. My first reaction was to think, no way. Tiffany must be wrong or confused Amber with someone else. But Tiffany sent me a photo she had taken that day. Like, I don't know why she took it. I guess she thought it was weird to see my sister with someone else. And there was clearly Amber kissing a guy who was definitely not Grant. I asked her if she knew who the guy was, and she said she asked a mutual friend, and it turned out it was Logan, Amber's ex-boyfriend from like 2 years ago. This is where maybe I became the villain of this story. I don't know. Everyone can judge. I looked up Grant's number on Amber's phone that I had saved from a time we organized a surprise dinner for my mom, and I texted him. I said, hi, Grant. I'm Michelle, Amber's sister. I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet? He responded like an hour later saying, sure, is something wrong? And I said I'd rather tell you in person. We agreed to meet the next day at a Starbucks near his office. When I got there, Grant looked worried, like he thought I was going to tell him Amber was sick or something. We sat down and I honestly didn't know how to start, so I just blurted out, I don't know if you know, but Amber has been seeing her ex-boyfriend Logan. Grant's face, I'll never forget it. He went white, like literally lost all the color from his face, and asked me, are you sure? I showed him the photo Tiffany had sent me and told him that according to my friend, she had seen them together several times in recent weeks. Grant was quiet for like 5 minutes looking at the photo, and then asked me, why are you telling me this? I told him the truth, that my parents were pressuring me to cancel my wedding for Amber's engagement, and that I felt he deserved to know the truth before proposing to someone who obviously wasn't being faithful. Grant thanked me. He literally had tears in his eyes, and told me he had already bought the ring, that he was going to propose the following week on a beach trip they had planned. I felt horrible for ruining that. But I also felt like I did the right thing. You know what I mean? Grant confronted Amber that same night. I wasn't there, obviously, but I found out later from a furious message from my mom at 11 at night saying, what the hell did you do, Michelle? Grant broke up with Amber and she's devastated. I didn't respond to that message. The next day, my parents showed up at my work, literally walked into the office, and my boss had to ask them to leave because they were making a scene. My dad was yelling at me that I had ruined my sister's life out of jealousy, that I was a horrible person, that how dare I meddle in Amber's relationship. That night, I received an email from my parents, calmer but equally angry, saying that obviously they weren't going to pay for anything for my wedding anymore and that they also weren't going to attend, that I had shown that I didn't care about family, that I only thought about myself, and that until I apologized to Amber and Grant and fixed the mess I had caused, they didn't want to know anything about me. My mom added at the end something like, "We always knew you were envious of your sister, but we never thought you'd stoop so low." Joshua was incredibly understanding about everything. He hugged me while I cried that night and told me we were going to find a way to pay for the venue, that his family could help a little, that we'd take out a loan if necessary. Turns out a friend of Joshua's knew the owner of the place where we were going to have the wedding and managed to negotiate a discount because he told him the situation. It wasn't ideal. We were going to end up in debt, but at least we could keep the date. What followed was basically a month of my parents and Amber telling the whole family their version of the story. According to them, I was so jealous of Amber's engagement that I made up a horrible lie about her to ruin her relationship. They painted me as an envious, manipulative sister who couldn't stand Amber being happy. I started receiving messages from aunts, uncles, cousins, even family friends, saying horrible things to me. How could I do that to my own sister? I should be ashamed. I was a liar and a bitter person. Tiffany, the friend who had shown me the photo of Amber with Logan, texted me like 2 weeks after all the drama, saying, "Hey, I don't know if this matters, but I just remembered something. Turns out at her birthday party last year, Amber had disappeared for like an hour, and when Tiffany looked for her, she found her making out with Tiffany's boyfriend at the time in one of the bedrooms. Tiffany had broken up with the guy, obviously, but had never told me because she didn't want to cause family drama. Now, with everything that was happening, she felt she should tell me. So it wasn't the first time Amber had cheated on someone. It wasn't the second time either. It was a pattern. I asked Tiffany if she could write all that down and send it to me, like a statement, and she agreed. She also put me in contact with 2 other people who knew similar stories about Amber, girls who had been her friends and who knew about other times she had been unfaithful with previous boyfriends. One of them even had screenshots of conversations where Amber basically admitted she liked having several guys at the same time because she got bored with just one. Like 3 weeks after the breakup with Grant, he texted me asking if we could have coffee. I agreed, although I was nervous because I didn't know if he was mad at me or what. We met at the same Starbucks where we had talked the first time. Grant looked better, like calmer, and he told me he wanted to thank me. He told me that after confronting Amber, she had admitted everything, not just the thing with Logan, but also that she had been seeing other guys throughout their entire relationship. Grant said it hurt him a lot, but that he was grateful to have found out before proposing to her and probably before marrying her. He asked me why I had told him, if it was just because of the wedding thing, or if I really cared about him. I told him honestly that at first, yes, it had been out of anger, out of frustration with my parents and with Amber, but that I also felt he deserved to know before committing his life to someone who didn't respect him. Grant nodded and told me my parents had asked him to sue me or at least talk badly about me to the family, but that he had refused because he knew I had told him the truth. It was a relief to know that at least one person understood my side of the story. September came, and with it, more drama. My parents sent me a letter, like a formal physical letter by certified mail, threatening to sue me for defamation. They said I had ruined Amber's reputation with lies, that Grant had shared the story with Amber's friends and colleagues, and that now she had lost her job as a public relations specialist because her bosses considered that her personal behavior reflected badly on the company. The letter said that unless I issued a public apology and paid them as compensation for damages, they were going to proceed legally. Joshua convinced me to talk to a lawyer. We spent like $500 on a consultation, and the lawyer basically told us my parents had no case, that I had told the truth and had evidence to back it up. That truth is an absolute defense against defamation. He told us we could send them a response letter explaining that, or simply ignore them. We decided to send the letter, more than anything to make it clear that we weren't going to be intimidated. My parents showed up at my house like 2 weeks before the wedding, like without warning, knocking on the door at 7 in the morning on a Saturday. Joshua opened the door because I was still asleep, and I could hear shouting from the bedroom. By the time I came down, my dad was red with fury, yelling at Joshua that he didn't understand anything because he didn't know our family, that I had been a troublemaker all my life, that I had always been jealous of Amber. My mom was crying, saying, "How is it possible that her own daughter would destroy the family this way?" I yelled at them to get out of my house. My dad pointed his finger at me and said, "You're going to regret this, Michelle. You'll see what it's like to be completely alone at your pathetic wedding with no family, with no one who really loves you." My mom added that the wedding wasn't even going to happen, that they were going to make sure of that. Although I don't know what exactly they thought they were going to do. Joshua basically pushed them out and locked the door. I stood there in the living room shaking, and all I could think was, this is my family. These are the people who are supposed to support me always. The week of the wedding was surreal. Several family members who had confirmed attendance canceled at the last minute. Some did it politely, saying they had other commitments. Others were more direct and said they weren't going to support a celebration when I had been so cruel to my sister. Out of 100 confirmed guests, we ended up with like 60 who actually attended. Joshua tried to cheer me up, saying the people who mattered were going to be there. And he was right, but it still hurt to see so many empty chairs on my family's side. 2 days before the wedding, my mom sent me a long text message. It said that she and my dad would give me one last chance to make things right. That if I canceled the wedding, publicly apologized to Amber, helped her get a new job, and paid for the ring Grant couldn't return, they would consider forgiving me and readmitting me to the family. The message ended with, "Think about it carefully, Michelle. This is your last chance to have a family." I didn't respond. Instead, I compiled everything. Absolutely everything. The photos of Amber with Logan. The testimonies from Tiffany and the other girls. The screenshots of conversations. The call logs between Amber and her various ex-boyfriends during her relationship with Grant that Grant had shared with me after checking Amber's phone. I even found old social media posts from Amber that clearly showed she was with different guys at the same time. I made a document, like a 20-page PDF, with everything organized chronologically. My parents showed up at my house again the night before the wedding. This time we didn't let them in, but my dad was yelling from outside that they were going to proceed with the lawsuit, that they were going to leave me on the street, that they were going to take everything from me. I called the police. When the officers arrived and asked my parents to leave, my mom looked at me through the window and literally said, "Dead to me. You're dead to me." They left, and I haven't seen them since that day. The wedding was beautiful. Honestly. Joshua looked gorgeous. I felt happy despite everything. And the people who attended really wanted to be there. Several friends and some cousins who knew the truth supported us incredibly. Joshua's mom told me before walking down the aisle that she was proud of me for standing firm, that I deserved to be happy and that they were now my family too. I cried, obviously, but they were good tears for the first time in months. Grant showed up at the reception, which was totally unexpected. He found me during the cocktail hour and handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter thanking me again for telling him the truth, and a check for the amount my parents had promised to pay for the venue. He told me I didn't have to accept it, but that he knew we had had to make sacrifices because of this whole situation, and that he had the means to help. Joshua and I cried right there, and we told him we couldn't accept that much money, but Grant insisted. He said to consider it a wedding gift, that after all, I had saved him from making the biggest mistake of his life. After the wedding and the honeymoon, which was modest but perfect, like a week in Cancun paid half and half between us and Joshua's parents, I came back to the reality of the family disaster. My parents sent another legal letter, this time more aggressive, with a ridiculous amount they supposedly owed for damages. Our lawyer responded with the 20-page document I had compiled, basically telling them that if they proceeded legally, we were going to present all this evidence in court. Which I would probably make Amber's situation even worse. I haven't heard about the lawsuit again. I guess they realized they had no case. Amber tried to contact me once, like 2 months after the wedding, saying we needed to talk. I responded that I had nothing to talk to her about, that I had spent my whole life being invisible so she could shine, and that I wasn't going to continue with that. She blocked me immediately after. The truth is, I don't know if I did the right thing. Sometimes I feel guilty, like maybe I should have kept quiet, maybe I should have canceled my wedding and let Amber have her moment. But other times, most of the time, I feel like I finally stood up for myself. Grant contacted me like a month ago to tell me he's dating someone new, someone he met in therapy after all the drama with Amber, and that he's really happy. He told me that if it weren't for me, he'd probably be married to Amber and miserable, maybe with kids in a horrible situation. Joshua and I are doing, well, more than well, actually. We paid off the venue loan faster than we thought, thanks to Grant's check, and because we both got raises at work. We talk sometimes about having kids, and when we do, he always says that our kids are going to know we love them equally, that we're never going to have favorites. And I know he means it, because he knows me, knows my story, and understands why that's so important to me. I have no contact with my parents or with Amber. Some cousins still talk to me, especially those who knew the whole story of how they treated me since I was a kid. My aunt, my mom's sister, sent me a message last month saying she always knew my parents favored Amber in an unhealthy way, but that she never knew how to say something without causing problems. She told me she was proud of me for finally setting boundaries, even if it meant losing my immediate family. Sometimes I see photos of Amber on social media, because she hasn't blocked me on all platforms. She already has a new boyfriend, another guy who, according to her posts, is amazing and perfect and the love of her life, the same things she said about Grant. My parents comment on every photo with hearts and supportive messages, like, "We love you, daughter. You're our princess. We're so proud of you." I wonder if the new boyfriend knows the whole story, if someone is going to tell him before it's too late. But honestly, it's not my problem anymore. Joshua asked me the other day if I ever regret telling the truth. I told him no, that the only thing I regret is spending 28 years trying to earn the love of people who were never going to see me as enough. He hugged me and told me I've always been enough, more than enough, and that he feels lucky to have found me. And that, I guess, is what matters in the end. Not the family you're born into, but the family you choose to build. Last week, I found an old box in the closet with photos from when I was a kid. And there was a photo from a piano recital I had. When I was like 10 years old, I was on stage, smiling in my new dress. And in the audience, you could see my parents completely distracted, looking at Amber, who was playing with her tablet instead of paying attention to me. I looked at that photo for a good while, and instead of feeling sad, I felt something more like peace. Like finally understanding that none of this was my fault, that I was never the problem. It took me 28 years to learn it, but at least I learned it before continuing to repeat the cycle. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. If my parents will eventually look for me, if Amber is going to have her happy ending, or if she's going to keep repeating the same patterns. What I do know is that I'm building something new, something better, with a person who values me and respects me. And maybe that's not the fairy tale ending I thought I wanted as a kid, but it's real and it's mine. And honestly, that's more than I ever had with my family of origin. So, yeah, I broke my family, according to them. But from my perspective, I finally freed myself.